All right, got YouTube going. And it says I'm consenting to YouTube, and I'm going to share my screen. And okay, can y'all see that? Zoom, folks? Good. All right.
That's good.
Good. All right, we all ready on this end to get started? Or we have hang on just a second. All right. Okay. All right, so as all of you have read, flies the lightning bug, and I really, my retiring mind doesn't remember where I heard about the lightning bug, but it looked like a really cool fly. Thinking forward to the Little Missouri and thinking about bluegill. The original lightning bug uses silver tinsel for the back, but I just didn't like the way that looked. I don't think I'd fit. It's just silver, you know, and it may work great. It may work better than any of these colors, but I've tied it in this brown. This is large holographic tinsel. Medium would work fine as well. And these are size 12 hooks to make it a little bit easier to tie. I think if I were to tie these to fish with, I would use 14s or maybe even down to 16 for trout. But 12 should be great for bluegill because I think this would be a really good bluegill fly as well. So we are using a slotted 1/8 inch tungsten bead, 70 or 8/0 thread of your choice. 140 will work. It'll just build up a little more here. 2 strands of peacock herl. The wings are pheasant, and there's about, and I'll mention this later, but there's probably 6 or 7 fibers in each of the 2 wings. You don't want too many because it gets a little bulky. And then there's probably about 10 or 12 fibers for the tail of peacock. And then we have brassy size wire, and this is gold that we're using tonight. We have some red here too. So, you know, this is kind of like I kind of said in the email, this is kind of a Christmas tree of a fly. So any color you like would work out fine. So let me get my hook and bead in and get caught up with y'all. Now, remember on your slotted beads, there is a right side up and an incorrect side up. And the difference is in one orientation of the slot, the bead fits better onto the hook. Notice here how the bead is not quite down to the eye of the hook. If I flip this bead over, it drops all the way down over the eye. And that is the slot. If you look at the slot on the bead, it has a rounded end and a squared off end. The rounded end should go up. Now, it's not critical if you don't tie it that way, just the bead won't go down quite as far. But the rounded end is up. All right, I'm using 70 denier UTC here in red because I'm going to tie a brown one. And we get our thread started behind the bead, and we wrap back all the way to the bend of the hook. I'm gonna go all the way back to where it just starts tending down a bit, which on this hook is about where there would be a barb would be if this was a barbed hook. Here, let me work on focus just a little bit. Okay, there we go. All right, then bring the thread back up to probably just behind the point and let it hang there. All right, now we want on our pheasant for the tail, I don't really count the fibers, just kind of eyeball it. you want to pull the fibers out straight away from the quill of the feather, shaft of the feather, because that helps align the tips. So I have grabbed probably almost a ½ inch. Looks like there's about a dozen fibers here. Now you can either cut them off the stem, or you can tear them off. And I'm going to tear these off. Just going to tear them off like that. And if I tear them, I always cut these little curlies, because they will grab. You can see how they're like little hooks. They will grab your thread. So now we have a little bunch of pheasant fibers here. It doesn't matter if you probably don't want them all exactly even, but they're pretty close. They form a nice tail. Kind of put our bead back to the beginning. And we want our tail to be, it's not a real long tail. We want our tail to be probably about from the bead to the bend of the hook. So roughly that length. And then we transfer that measurement back to our thread. And using a pinch wrap or a couple of loose wraps, we bind our thread down, bind our feather down, and then while holding the feathers on top of the hook shank, wrap back to about where your end of your thread point was before, and then wrap forward.
How long did you say the tail had been?
About the length of the shaft from the bead to the bend of the hook, roughly. It's not critical. Just anywhere in that range, I think, will be fine. And again, if they're out of line just a little bit, that just gives a little more taper to the tail. Now we want to wrap this forward all the way to the bead, the back of the bead. And I want to show you a little trick that I learned here a while back. Sometimes I'll start wrapping when I wrap forward without holding this right piece. Notice how it wraps the material around the hook shank. Well, if I take care to take wraps immediately adjacent to my previous wrap, real close wraps, notice how it doesn't move the material around, and I don't have to hold on to this to keep it from wrapping. So I'll wrap to behind the bead, and then pheasant just breaks off. So you can just jerk the pheasant and break it off. Yep. And if you don't tie it down tight enough, when you jerk it, it might come out, but that's all good. All right, our next material is our wire. There's our piece of wire. So we've got our tail tied in. Our thread is resting behind the bead. And we want to tie the wire in on the near side of the hook. We want to run that wire down on the side of the hook closest to you. So to do that, I straighten out the end of my wire here. And I like to just push it up into the bead, and that kind of helps hold it there a bit. And then take a couple of loose wraps and hold the wire against the near side. The reason we're doing it against the near side and not on top or somewhere else is when we counter wrap after we tie the tinsel on, it'll be in the right position to start wrapping. So we wrap all the way back with our wire to the back of our thread point.
Back to where we tied them.
Yeah, all the way back to the rear of your thread. Yep, all the way back to the rear, and let your thread hang there. Another thing this does is since the wire forms the underbody of the fly, you want a nice smooth underbody. So once you wrap it all the way back to the rearmost portion of your thread, you can then take open spiral wraps and bring the thread back behind the bead again. So we have wire tied in all the way to the back, and we have our thread now back to the bead.
Say tie the wire in now?
Tie the wire all the way back to the, no, don't wrap the wire yet.
Okay.
No, just let it hang off the back. And we just take your thread back to the front. What you need, Robert? Lost your wire? I don't have any more here. Now, I mentioned about materials wanting to wrap around the hook shank. This wide tinsel is terrible about flipping around the hook shank. It is almost impossible to keep in one place. So to help us tie it in, take your scissors and cut a point on the tinsel. So just cut the tinsel at an angle.
Video, so it was like a clip.
Yep, so cut the tinsel at an angle to a point. And what that'll do, that'll give us a narrow point to tie in, and then the tinsel does not have a tendency to wrap around the hook shank. So I'll take that point, and just like I did the wire, I push that point into the back of my bead, and notice the tinsel's on my side of the hook. It's not on top, because if you start with it on top, it's going to wrap around to the other side. So the thread's going to naturally take it around, and see, as I make that first wrap, it rotates it right to the top of the hook. So then and it pulls out if you pull too hard on it.
So we want it to end up on top?
We want it to end up on top. Yep. And don't do like I just did, pull on it before it's secured down. And then, so just hold it up on top. Usually it's slightly, angle it slightly back toward you, and that will help it stay on top. And make touching wraps all the way back. If you have a couple little gap like I do there, it's not a big deal. And you want to make sure, lift the tinsel and make sure that you tie the tinsel all the way back to cover this thread base under here. Because if I stopped right now and started wrapping my tinsel, I have a piece of red thread sticking out the bottom. So make sure that, just check it and make sure you go back all the way to where you cover that.
We need to make this pretty big.
No, just single wrap a thread is fine.
Okay.
And then go back forward with your thread again, and again, leave your thread at the back of the bead. So now we have a nice, relatively smooth underbody to wrap our tinsel around. So next step is to wrap the tinsel, and you want to overlap about a half width of tinsel.
You wrap it in the same direction as the thread?
As a thread, yes. I'm wrapping over the top. We are going to counter wrap the wire though. So over the top. All the way. Hang on. I'm wrapping it up with my camera in front of me here, so slipping on it. There we go. And when you get behind the bead, just take a few wraps of thread over the tinsel.
I don't like that.
You don't like it, John?
Don't like it. It's twisting the other way. It looks like it's sparkly out, but it's not. So I'm going to have to make a change.
Once you wrap a few wraps over the tinsel, pull the tinsel back and make a few wraps in front of it.
Probably just the old eyes, Bill.
Understand, John? I'm used to time with my magnifier at home, and I don't have it here. And then trim off your tag end of your tinsel. It does not matter if there's a little piece left sticking up, because it won't show. Okay, I'll stop here for a second, let everybody catch up. Whoa.
We're gonna trim the tinsel?
Yeah, trim the tinsel. And there'll be a little, as you can see on mine, there's a little piece sticking up, but that doesn't hurt anything. Okay. All right, now we want to counter wrap our wire. So we wrap the tinsel over the top of the hook. So we want to wrap the wire underneath the hook first. So we go underneath the hook. We were going over the top with the tinsel. And so now we go underneath. And this is why we
Touch them,
touch what?
the wire.
No, yeah, I'm going to show you here in just a second. So you want to spread the wire out to where you probably have, 5 or 6 wraps of wire to the front. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to do one more right behind the bead tile. I'm going to show you how to tie. Counter wrapping wire can make it a little more tricky to tie it off. So I'm going to show you what I do here. So what I do, I'm holding my wire down with tension on the wire. I take my thread and loop it around the wire, just the actual strand of wire, loop it around twice. And then I make my wraps over my fly. And then make a few wraps in front of the wire, and it will be secure and won't come out. If you don't make those wraps around the wire or do some other change of direction with your thread, it might slip out because the counter wrapped wire is in the opposite direction.
Wire.
Yep, go ahead and helicopter, twist the wire off. Now this will probably fish just like it is. We're going to dress it up a lot more than this. All right. All our Zoom folks doing okay?
Yep.
Good.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. All right. All right. So next, we go back to our tinsel one more time. And just like we did before, we cut the end of it at an angle to form a point.
Same color.
Same color tinsel, yeah. Now, a lot of this is going to be the wing case of the thorax. And a lot of the videos you see on YouTube, they use pearl for this or different colors. So it's kind of up to you, but I like the same color. So we're going to do just like we did before. We're going to push this point, leave it on the near side of the hook. So when we tie it, it'll rotate to the top. Push that point into the back of the bead and see it just nicely rotates it right on top. And we want to take a few thread wraps, and we don't want to go back very far with this. So what looks about right is about halfway between the hook point and the back of the bead. If you let your thread, if you tie it back to about that point, that makes, I'm going to move it up just a little bit more. I think I'm going to
Right on the top.
I want it right on top because this is going to be the wing case. So we're going to tie our peacock in next, and we're going to pull this over the peacock.
About halfway to the point.
Yeah, Carlton, I think it's halfway between the point and the back of the bead, roughly. Just whatever looks good for a thorax for you. You don't want to. This is a fairly short shanked hook, so we don't have a lot of that tinsel back there. We don't want to cover it all up. All right, so now we have a little gap there. That's probably maybe an eighth of an inch, probably 3/16 of an inch. All right, everybody caught up? Not quite. All right. Get 2 pieces of your peacock, and don't start tying them in yet. But get 2 pieces of your peacock. And these tips are really, really fragile, so I cut back about an inch and a half of those off to get into some stronger fibers there.
Start
On the point, yep, cut it, yeah, starting on the point and cut an inch and a half off. Now I want you to notice one thing about peacock. Notice it's kind of a one-sided feather. You have this little quill up on one side of it, and then you have the feather fibers hanging down. We want to line up both of these pieces of peacock, and I'm gonna have to do it behind the camera here, and I'll show it again in a second. We want to line up both of these pieces of peacock side by side with the quill on both of them pointing up. And I'll show you why in just a second. Line it up with the tips even. If your tips aren't quite even, just take your scissors and snip them even. And we want that quill pointing up. And the reason we do that is when I tie this in and the quill is pointing up, I'm going to be wrapping that quill down onto the hook shank. If you ever wrap peacock, you notice how sometimes it wraps over itself and mashes itself down and all that. This helps prevent that. So if we tie it with the, I'll take a couple of loose wraps here. Whoops, nope, it's got to stay on this side. So angle it down. And we want to keep it on the side. We want that quill to be pointed up. Yeah, the shaft of it. Yep, the shaft of it pointed up.
So you put the two shafts.
Put them, yeah, sandwich them side by side with the two shafts pointing up.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit, even though it's not real clear. You can see as I start to wrap this, and then move your thread forward. Sorry, move your thread forward to behind the bead. As I start to wrap that shaft of the feather is against the hook. And if I can keep it all straight, the little feathers are all pointing out. And we get a nice bushy wrap of our hook. And you can see they're not really mashed down that much. So when you get to the back of the bead, take a couple of loops of thread, wraps of thread over your peacock.
If you get it wrong like I did, you can wrap them the other direction
You can.
and it still works.
Yeah, as long as you wrap it with that little shaft of the feather or that, and that's a Tim Flagler tip. I didn't come up with that. I watched him do that here a couple of months ago, and I said, well, I'm going to try that next time. Make sure you take a couple of wraps in front of your peacock as well as behind it, and then trim it off. And peacock breaks, but I wouldn't suggest trying to rip it and break it. It doesn't always turn out well. All right, I'm going to rotate my vise where you can kind of see the top of the fly a little bit. And now we want to pull that tinsel forward over the peacock. And yep, and then tie it down. So I'm tying it down right on top of the hook shank. Right on top of the hook. And a couple of wraps over the tinsel, and then pull the tinsel back just like we did before, and take 2 or 3 wraps in front of it and trim your tinsel off. And I'm going to take a couple more wraps just to make sure it stays there. Now this would be a good fly just like it is. I mean, I think it would fish just fine, just like this. But we're going to add the legs, and the legs are really the trickiest part of this fly.
Oh, save that for last, right?
Yep, save that for last. So
So did you trim off your the flat stuff,
the tinsel, yes.
tinsel?
Yep, it is trimmed off, and see it's tied on top of the hook. And there's looking down on the fly. You can see it's right on top. And if it's not quite on top exactly, that's no big deal. Fish won't care. That doesn't float in the same orientation anyway. All right, now for the legs, I'm going to pick, probably, may need to actually count. Let me zoom out because I'm way too close for you to see this. All right, I'm going to count these. I'm going to count 6 of them, whatever you want. Any ever see the guy from South Louisiana, the Cajun Ninja Cook on YouTube? He always says, "You do you." And I can't do it like Rich can because Rich is Galliano, but he always says, "You do you." So you pick whatever you want. I've got six strands here that I'm going to pull. And you want to make sure your tips are fairly well aligned, because these are our legs. And we tie the legs on the side of the hook. So let me zoom in just a little bit here.
Bill, if you got that, if you got a curve, you want it to curve away.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't, okay.
No, it doesn't matter. It's gonna be so short, it doesn't matter. We're using peacock, 6 strands of peacock. Did I say, am I saying?
Pheasant tail.
Oh, yeah, thank you. All right. Pheasant tail, 6 strands of pheasant tail. Did I give you, that's it, you did peacock, like I said, didn't you, Catch? Sorry about that. It is. It is a spider. So what I want to do here, you don't want to set, the legs are going to be quite short. So you want to really put about the middle of this pheasant bunch at your thread point. And then I'm going to just press my thumb against that peacock and just hold it against the side of the fly like that. Did I say peacock again? Dad, come on. Pheasant, 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 pheasant. P-H-E-S-A-N-T. I can spell it even.
Yeah,
So-
but you were pressing on the peacock curl.
Well, I am pressed on the peacock curl, but take 2 loose wraps.
Well, I think you put however many you ran the first time on each side.
Yeah, so I counted 6, so I'll have 6 on the other side. If you put 8, that's fine. So now I have 2 wraps of thread that's not loose. It's not like totally loose. It has some tension on it. And then I'm going to put my finger under this just to kind of keep it in place. And I'm going to pull that knot peacock. I'm going to pull the knot peacock feathers forward until my leg is whatever length you want. I like it a little longer than some you see out there. So I'm going to pull it to where it's about as long as the tinsel body. And once you get it there, take 2 or 3 more tight wraps of thread. And
It should be sitting on the side.
on the side, yes. Here's the top view of my fly. You can see it's on the actual side there.
Just use these.
This, like I said, this is the trickiest part of the fly is getting this.
Yeah, it's getting a little hair.
That's why I put my finger under that holds it, because otherwise it gets all crooked on there, and you put your finger under it, it'll hold it straight. And then go ahead and trim off your excess pheasant. Take a couple of wraps of thread.
Are they supposed to be hanging down?
No, they're on the side, Peter. See this straight out the side.
Equal amounts on each side or just one side?
Well, we've only tied one side on right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're getting ready to tie the other side. So when we finish, there will be another set of legs here.
Oh, I get it.
Yep.
Okay.
And you just have to.
So do the far side of your hook just like you did the near side of your hook.
Oh, I see.
Body.
So I am going to grab
Take a couple of loose wraps.
6 fibers here.
Ah,
The angst of peacock.
Good looking fly, but I don't know what's
All right, and I'm gonna rotate my vise, since I have a rotary vise, and this time I use, since it's on the far side of my hook, I use my index finger and just hold those legs right on the side of the fly. And again, take a couple of loose wraps, and I put my finger under the peacock to support it, and pull it down till it's about the same length as my other peacock pheasant. I don't know what it is. That's apparently it's a mental block, y'all. I'm sorry. And I just pulled it out, so don't feel bad.
That was demonstration.
That was demonstration of how to do it wrong.
I thought I was wrong.
Nope, I pulled it out. And then trim the excess off. And I have two legs splayed out. Then build a little hot spot right behind the bead. And then you're ready to whip finish and finish the fly or half hitch, whatever your particular bird method is. And I'm going to whip finish.
Nice. Get off again.
No, I have tangled up. It's tough to tie around the camera.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
I know that. How many fish you think they'll last, Rob?
That's the one that.
How many fish you think the legs will last? 2 or 3?
That is the one that's wrong.
Mhm. Yeah, but look how good it looks though right now.
It does look good. It looks kind of.
Now, one option too that would make this fly a little bit easier to tie, instead of the peacock pearl, use like peacock SLF dubbing.
That's what I was gonna ask you about.
Yeah, just put you about a 1 inch long dubbing noodle, that SLF dubbing on your thread, wrap it, and you're done. So
Is that dubbing as good as the real thing?
I think it is. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yep.
It was looking good. Yeah. It was looking nice. It doesn't spoon pretty easy. It's short up there.
Well, our
A wing cage. Oh, yeah, you gotta cut.
all right, our second copy will go smoother here. I'm gonna put a little cement, head cement on mine, because I want to learn how to say peacock instead of, or say pheasant. Did it again. I did it again. Guinea feathers, yep.
Just about, just about that much.
Okay.
All right.
Roger. Okay.
I mean, you
All right. And Carlton is headed up to the Little Missouri tomorrow, and he's gonna try these out for us.
the other way, but I accidentally trimmed a couple of legs off. I didn't make it.
And you can use almost anything for legs. I bet you could even use like deer hair or bucktail or something. I'm not sure. All right. Want to do one more copy of it?
Yes.
All right. Yes, let's go then. I'm gonna tie a chartreuse this time. Just to do something a little bit different. So go ahead and remember, start your thread, take it to the back after you put your bead on. Tie in your peacock.
Hey, Bill, tell me how the tail's supposed to be.
Pheasant.
Tail.
I don't know what it is, y'all. I've never, I mean, it's like, I'm getting to worry about myself here. All right, let me get my thread started. Zoom back out a little bit here. All right, remember, we want to take our thread back to where the hook starts to bend downward and then come back forward to just behind the point. Then grab about, again, 8 or 10 of those pheasant fibers. And I'm gonna get a few more.
If I was smart, that's what I would have done.
Pheasant.
I know, it's one of those mental block things.
That's what I should have done.
All right. And again, we want the tail to be not real long, but about as long as the bead to the bend. So
Where, Bill?
about the back of the bead to the bend. So
Back and beat to the bend?
yeah, roughly. And again, it's not critical.
Okay.
So then I move the pheasant back, transfer my tie-in point, do a couple of pinch wraps. And then tie the tail down to the rear of my thread point. And if you tie it back so far to where it points down a little bit, that's fine. But it generally should point straight. And again, remember, if we do touching wraps forward, it won't wrap our pheasant around the hook, and we can just break it off.
Going straight to Christmas.
Yep. And leave the thread hanging just fine. All right, wire comes next. Gold wire. You need a white, Rich? All right. Gold wire. Remember, I take my wire and push it into the back of the bead. Now, don't push it so far that it goes through the bead. Like that. So pull it back. Do a little bit. And remember, we want that wire to be on the near side of the hook. It's not super critical, but it just makes the wrapping a little bit easier if we do that. We go all the way back to the back, and I have my material clip here that I'm just going to clip it into. And then take the thread back behind the bead. All right. Tinsel time. To make it easier to tie in, let's cut that point, let's cut that angle, at the end of our tinsel. And I put it on the near side of the hook, so when I wrap my thread, it will pull it around to the top. And if it wants to wrap around the hook, just pull it back to the near side so we can keep on the top. Now remember to make sure to wrap the tinsel all the way back to the back of your thread. That way none of the thread will show under the tinsel. Maybe even a little farther. There we go. Yeah, that's good. And once your tinsel is tied in, go back forward. Open spiral wraps is fine to behind the bead.
Ah,
And then we wrap our tinsel by beginning to wrap over the top.
You said you go the opposite direction with your
We will with the wire.
wire.
Yeah, we'll counter wrap with the wire. That just helps that, I think it helps that tinsel from slipping a little bit. It's pretty slippery stuff. And though I haven't fished this fly, I suspect it could slip on you. Once you get behind the bead, 2 or 3 wraps over the tinsel. And then pull the tinsel to the back and 2 or 3 wraps in front of the tinsel.
that's one.
and then trim off the tag end of the tinsel. All right, and I'll stop here for just a second. Trim the tinsel, yep. All right, now let's wrap our wire in the opposite direction we wrapped our tinsel. So I'm going under my hook and over. And 5 or 6 wraps is plenty. Space them out. I can't even see the wire against that chartreuse. All right. And then remember, since we counter wrap, let's make sure to wrap our thread around that wire a couple of times.
So we're kind of spacing the wire?
Yes, you space it out,
Okay.
5 or 6 wraps total to the front. I'll zoom in so you can kind of see it. Yep. All right, then once we've tied off our wire, we can helicopter it or cut it if you have an old pair of scissors. I'm gonna helicopter it off. And once you do that, take a couple of wraps just to make sure it won't come loose. All right, and we'll go back to our tinsel again. Now, technically, you could have left the tinsel long, wrapped your wire forward, and used the same piece of tinsel, but it gets in the way. It's hanging all out in the front here, and it gets in the way. So it's a real. I tried that a couple of times just to save time, but no, it gets in the way. So we cut that angle, and just like before, slide it up into a bead on the near side. And take a few wraps so it lines up right on top. And again, we don't want to tie it in too far back. About halfway between the point and the back of the bead. I'm going to do one more turn there. There we go. And then it's peacock herl time again. I say it right this time, it's peacock. I'm surprised I didn't say it's time to tie pheasant in for the thorax, but
Twist these to put it on there?
twist it, you could, yeah. Yeah, you could. Jim asked, could you twist the peacock to put it on? Yeah, we've done that with some other patterns before. And that works well. You don't have to worry about the direction of the shaft. But this is I think when you get into some smaller flies, you'll be down to one peacock herl here. Okay, so I'm stacking those just like before, with side by side with that quill side up. I'll zoom in so you can see it one more time. You can see the shaft is pointed up. So I'll hold it down at an angle, that way it won't go over the top of the hook. And I tie it in and tie it forward to behind the bead. And then we just make touching wraps with the peacock forward. These aren't as good of pearls as I had for the first fly. They don't have as much feather on them, but they're fine. And we'll get to the bead. Couple of wraps behind and then a couple of wraps in front. I'll actually do 3 behind and the tight ones, 3 good tight ones in front, and trim off excess peacock. Oops, sorry about that, folks. There we go. And just like we did before, pull that tinsel over the top of the peacock to behind the bead. Couple of wraps of thread to tie it down. Front, pull it back, and a couple of wraps in front of it, and then trim the tinsel off. Okay, only thing left are wings. Remember, we tied 6 or 7 fibers on each side. And I'm going to start on the near side of my hook. So I'm going to count out here. Okay, there's my 6, and if I hold them straight out from the hook shank, I'm sorry, from the hook shank, from the feather shaft like that, and pull them off, the tips will stay aligned. Trim off those little tags, and somewhere about the middle, I can just push in with my thumb and hold it, and take 2 or even 3 loose wraps.
Went from where to where?
Went from the back of the peacock over the top to there. Pull it forward. You just pull it forward like a cap over the, like a cover over the peacock,
Oh,
and then tie it down behind the bead.
oh, so you're not wrapping. I see.
No, you don't wrap it on. And then I put my finger under that pheasant like I did before. Pull it forward. And yeah, that's about as long, pheasant fibers about as long as the body. And take a couple of good tight wraps, pull it back, and a couple of good tight wraps in front. And trim off the tag end of your pheasant. You use scissors?
No, I just need you to,
Undo it.
yeah. You can see it better than me.
It's all on.
Bill,
Yes,
these things will ride hook point up.
it should. Yeah, it's a jig hook, so it should.
If that's the case, I tied on one of mine, I tied the legs on the top with the thought that once it flips over, the legs are going to be actually on the bottom where they should be.
Yeah, I think you could, but you know, Flip, I don't know. I think the bugs move around in the water so much when they're swimming. I think they're in all sorts of orientations.
Yeah.
You know, I've watched videos of them kind of swimming, so I've never noticed the difference. I've tied these jig flies, you know, what would normally be a non-jig fly in a jig pattern where it's upside down, and it doesn't seem to matter.
It's not that critical.
Yeah, like that. Well, like that Rossbear hares here we tied Saturday. You know, that's really, it rides upside down if you.
Speaking of that, didn't you say that Ketch was saying he started tying his using the zonkers?
Yes, Catch is here, but isn't that right, Catch?
Yes.
Yep. All right, so now here I'm going to lay that pheasant on the far side of my hook, and I'm going to use my index finger this time just to hold it there. Take a couple of wraps. I'm going to take 3. And I'm gonna leave that index finger, I'm gonna turn my device so you can see it. Leave that index finger up under it to steady it. That also gives you a little tension. It just makes it a lot easier to tie. Bring it in, a couple more wraps, a couple more in front. And tie it up. And you can see my legs are kind of pointing up a little bit right on this one, which they didn't on the last one. I don't think it matters at all. It might matter to us if we wanted to make sure we were tying them all identical, but I don't think that matters. If it bothers, just mash down a little bit. All right, a little quick whip finish, and this one is done as well. I think head cement might be pretty important here because those pheasant fibers, and they're sticking out right there, which is almost like another little set of legs. I could cover them up with thread, but I don't like that much thread up there. So I think that head cement will really help hold those fibers in. As Robert said a while ago, it remains to be seen how durable they are over a number of fish. But if it's catching fish and the legs come off, it'll probably still catch fish. All right, how folks out in Zoom world out there?
Good.
Looks like we're doing okay.
Tom, I didn't speak to you. I didn't see you a while ago. How are you?
Doing well. I just had to substitute some things that I had on the desk. My little red stuff kept breaking, so I had a piece on my desk for something else. So
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I used it.
Yep. So it should be a good one. I mean, it could be a good wintertime fly. I mean, you could tie this in blue with a blue body. I know I've tied like blue darts with a little mow, and it's done well. But I'm gonna tie a bunch of these in chartreuse and maybe silver for bluegill next spring and try those.
Yeah.
Yep, I think it will go well. All right, any questions? That's our 2 copies.
His tail and his
Great low fly.
All right, thanks. All right, folks, no other questions. We'll sign off for the evening. Paul, good to see you. Hope you join us again.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it.
All right,
Good night.
good night. Take care.
Thanks very much.
Yeah,
Good night, Bill.
good night. Good night, Peter.